All right, we are live. Yes, let's hit the music. We are at the ACC Tournament in Charlotte alongside Joe Giglio. I am Joe Ovies. Duke, Carolina, Part 3. And to help us talk about it from the ACC Network is Luke Hancock. Legend, Louisville legend, ACC legend now, too.
I'll take that. If I could sneak into ACC legend, I'd be doing really well.
Hey, man, I'm all about it. Let's get everybody in. All right, man. So let's just get right to this. Carolina needed this Duke game to happen for their NCAA tournament chances. And, Joe, do you want to say the line? Do you want to introduce Luke to one of your many axioms as it relates to North Carolina?
Yeah, Luke, if something good can happen for Carolina, it will. If. Some of their fans confuse that with I call them lucky, or I say always, or I say everything. That's not the axiom.
Not it.
If something good can happen for Carolina, it will. Oh, you want to fire Maliq Brown? Oh, look at this. Hey. We're going to hire the coach with 6 Super Bowl rings. Oh, you're on the bubble? Ohio State, Indiana, and Xavier today lost. Yep. So, yeah, bubble
Xavier
luck is real. And they did. Bubble luck is real, and so is bracket luck. So when you look at this matchup, and guess, oh, yeah, by the way, Cooper Flagg twisted his ankle.
Yeah, now that adds another one, too.
Yeah, that's another layer to this.
Tomorrow. So what do you see for North Carolina without going against Duke without Cooper Flagg tomorrow in what should be a really fun building tomorrow night?
Well, they've played 2 very different games so far, right? The first game, Jalen Withers gets them going in such a way that it was easy. The rhythm, especially on the offensive end, they were making shots, the ball was moving. This game was a grimy game. There were tons of fouls and stoppages, and Wake wanted to keep that momentum and rhythm out of there. I think Duke is going to want to play up and down. They're going to want more flow to the game. But can Carolina make enough shots is my question. Because as much as I like Jalen Withers' performance, he's not the guy to make you 7 threes a game. I think that's quite obvious. He hit some big shots tonight. But they got to find a little bit more rhythm, and the bigs got to continue to be more potent. I think in their 7 games leading into the Duke game at the end of the year, that was the big difference for me. Van Allen Lubin and Jalen Withers, their production was just so much better than early on in the year.
I'm curious, from a player perspective, when a game gets like it gets today in the second half, where I felt like there was a stoppage every other play, there's double fouls, they're going into the monitor, you got the parents behind you screaming that everything's a foul. Yep. How does that
bench technicals?
Right. We got a bench tech. Like, does that disrupt the flow? Does that mess with you? Like, how does that work on the court?
Well, it definitely disrupts the flow. And again, like if I'm Steve Forbes, that's exactly what I would have done.
Yeah.
Tried to make the game choppy like that.
Yeah.
But I think as a player, you just got to be more intentional. You realize when games are just not having that same rhythm to them. And when you're more intentional, you're more patient. Maybe you got to go inside a little bit more. You really got to focus on your strengths. Mm-hmm. And so I think getting the ball in R.J. Davis's hands consistently down the stretch is a pretty obvious one for Carolina.
That was the thing that Joe was complaining about. Not that he had other reasons to care about what R.J. Davis was doing today. But I'll just go ahead and I'll front the conversation you and I were having. It's like last year it was pretty obvious how things were going to go, right?
Yeah. And to Luke's point, the way that they've played better is a little bit more by committee.
Yeah.
But he had 2 shots in the first 17 minutes of this basketball game. And I'm going, if you're interested in turning down an NIT bid for the second time in 3 years, keep the ball away from RJ.
Right.
Like that's not how they're going to get home. Your point about Van Allen Lubin and Withers, when you see Reed, you see that real size. They struggled a little bit with that today.
Yeah.
And that's where Duke, Malwatch, the size that they have besides Malwatch, I thought they struggled. And Cooper Flagg, quite frankly, was a problem around the rim for them in the game in Chapel Hill. But they were so good in Chapel Hill. It felt like it would be easy to be demoralized if it was another one of these games on Friday night. Obviously, yes, Joe, great analysis. Cooper Flagg's not playing. It's going to be easier.
Yeah.
But it almost it feels like it's mentally more of a boost for Carolina than the actual, you've played on plenty of teams where you lose one guy. It's the old Dean Smith rule. Your team actually plays better the first game without that one superstar because everyone lifts their games. But it does feel like a mental boost for Carolina tomorrow.
1,000%. From a player's perspective, you've already played them twice. The adage of it's tough to beat a team 3 times, I don't necessarily agree with that. But now that you have a superstar like Cooper Flagg, who leads them in everything, that's not going to play in this one, Carolina's going to have so much confidence going into this that we don't have to play a perfect game anymore. We just got to play well. We got to shoot the basketball well. We got to have that flow on offense. And you can't get dominated by Duke's bigs. And they are big, athletic, strong. But, again, Carolina's bigs have been playing better.
But they're not Duke. That's the thing. When you look at the 6-game winning streak, the 6-game win streak leading up to that Duke game, and then the follow-up, what we saw yesterday, it's just not the same. I mean, Duke's just built it a little bit differently. But, again, the injuries start to add up here. Now I'm curious from the Duke perspective, right?
Well, real quick.
Yeah.
Just in terms of Carolina's confidence, we talked about the psychological aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
They're also going to watch this game today, right? The Carolina's going to go watch every minute of what happened in the Georgia Tech game. They're going to see the start of that game. They're going to see how they had to fight tooth and nail to get back in it.
Those are all a little bit today.
Absolutely. Those are all confidence builders for Carolina.
But this is also a good response game for Jon Scheyer and Duke. Because I thought it was interesting. We have the clip, which we'll play later, which I thought Jon's postgame was interesting in that he was very adamant about, like, it's not worth it to put Cooper Flagg on the court if he's not 100% sure. He's like, I think I'm paraphrasing here. It's like, everybody in that room has to convince me, and I'm not convinced right now. But this allows for Jon to go to that room and say, hey, you're going to hit all sorts of weird stuff in the NCAA tournament against hungry teams, because clearly Carolina needs this to really solidify the NCAA tournament. This is an opportunity for Maliq. It's an opportunity for, we just saw this the other day with Caleb Foster, a DMP, to, having a good defensive effort that Duke fans were crazy about. I'm sitting here thinking, Isaiah Evans, man, this is your opportunity to really light things up, because he was the difference today. He has the green light to shoot, and he did it, and it definitely changed the nature of the game. So these are opportunities for Duke, I think, against Carolina tomorrow.
There are 5 stars deep on that roster, right? I mean, you think back to, I know it's forever ago, but the Auburn game, and Isaiah Evans gets in there after not really being very productive through the early part of that year and wins them that game. I mean, it's nice that you can go 10, 11 deep. Now, Jon Scheyer's got to do a really good job of putting confidence in these guys, especially when the adversity hits, because they all rely heavily on Cooper as well. And you're going to have back and forth in this game. Can you have that same response? I think, obviously, Cooper goes out and they make that run in the second half against Georgia Tech. So that is a confidence builder, but he's just so influential in so many aspects of what they do on both ends of the floor. And I personally, it's not just Cooper. I think this is huge because Maliq Brown is a weapon for them. Yeah. Especially on the defensive end, being able to switch 1 through 5. And then, just an extra piece is Jay Lucas, defensive coordinator of this. It's just a lot of moving pieces. The continuity is off a little bit for Duke.
You brought that up to me in the concourse. I know Scheyer was asked about that in the post game today, and he answered it the right way. It's my identity, my vision. I trust Jay to execute that vision, but ultimately guys have to step up and everything else. So you think that was a little bit more of a factor today in how they play? Because Jon kind of dismissed the ideas. Like, they had 31 points in the first half. I could see why he was bristling at it.
So these guys set up their staff different than we did, right? Rick Pitino's not going to have an offensive and defensive coordinator. He does all that himself, right? But the number 1 defensive team in the country lost their defensive coordinator. Yeah. I mean, it is going to be substantial. I couldn't even imagine. Again, I played for Rick, who does everything. But if one of our assistants, any one of them, was out, going to another job at that point in the season, again, we're talking about the psychological aspect. Oh, we can win a national championship without Jay Lucas. We don't need that. That's not a good way to go into tournament basketball.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
I mean, I'll just naturally seg into it then. Tell me a Coach Pitino story, Coach P story, because I've been saying pretty much since November, I cannot wait to see which Kentucky school gets Coach P in the bracket. Put them both in there as far as I'm concerned. But
you don't buy that they don't look at those type of things before that?
Sure.
I totally agree with that. Going back to my personal experience. But
I actually love to see Louisville. You see some of the administrators over there. You're in the holding area. And let's be honest, school was embarrassed the last few years. However many days they were here, they were embarrassed. You're almost kind of like hiding the logo, and you're
I told producers we're not talking about him until he gives us a reason to.
Yeah,
a good reason.
You don't want to see him, but it's a proud fucking program, man. I mean, it's proud, and you see them, and if you've ever been to a game down there, obviously as you have, you realize like it's a real basketball matters there.
Big time.
And I think it's great for the league. Now, I hope I didn't jinx him tonight against freaking Kyle Smith, who's a genius, by the way. But I think it's great for the league to see them playing the way that they are, and for Pat to have the success that he's having.
It'd be real brutal if they weren't any good this year, and we had Clemson and Duke locks for the tournament, and everybody else is just hoping.
Yeah,
it'd be real rough. But
yeah,
I do think Pat Kelsey has done a phenomenal job, and you've seen that by that fan support. I mean, every game that I got to watch, which is not many because I'm usually working most of those, when you sit back and listen to whoever's calling that game, they all had a moment where they kind of sat back and they were like, this environment's awesome. This is great. We are so happy to have Louisville basketball back. The community's just rallied around those guys. And I've been saying this kind of nonstop. Pat Kelsey needs that foundation year. I honestly, going in, looking at the roster, knowing what Pat Kelsey did, I thought they'd be good.
Sure.
I didn't think they would be this good.
Yeah.
And I think you need a year like this to put the trajectory in the right way. You got to give him an A+. It's been a lot of fun. And a lot more fun in the last few years. Yes.
As people from New Jersey like to say, college basketball is a year-to-year proposition. So as many good roster moves as he made this year, I'm just being serious. Like next year, it may not work out that way. I mean, that's just the truth. Look at Kansas. I mean, they got NL money out the ears, and they can't quite figure it out.
Those guys don't seem to like each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but here's the thing I would say about Kelsey, and I think people are missing what he did this year. And it's not so much as, resuscitating an entire program. Usually people look at that coach of the year and go, oh, who outperformed expectation?
Yeah.
Louisville didn't go like 12-8 in the league after, winning whatever it was, 4 league games in the previous. They went 18-2. Like, they had a whale of a season. The game up in Raleigh, it's probably the one that got Kevin fired, to be perfectly honest with you, because they came out and they just put it on State.
Mm-hmm.
And that building was like, now, wait a second. If we get a new one of those without even thinking about the $6 million NIL budget,
right.
but, like, oh, no. If we get one of those, we could turn this whole thing around in a minute. But, I think people aren't giving – I get it. He won the award. But I think people are trying to equate it to your colleague, Seth Greenberg, about performing something when the truth of the matter is they went 18-2 in the league.
Just totally
18-2?
That's nonsense.
Yeah, that's just different.
I'm sorry. I do think, if they were just okay, would have been a great turnaround. Everybody would be
you can
excited.
still make the argument.
Yeah, they're 14-6.
Sure.
Jon Scheyer wins Coach of the Year in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's happy still, but he has done a fantastic job. I mean, 55-5 for the top 3 teams in this league.
Yeah,
is unbelievable.
Well, actually, we'll get out of here. Get you out of here on this. And again, appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you brought that up because last year it was a big, the conversation points were about what the Big 12 had done and just destroying everybody else. And it kind of goosed their numbers and it helped them in conference play. I don't think anybody's questioning the strength of the SEC. The ACC had a bad non-conference that feeds the numbers, but something funny happened this year. You mentioned the top. There has been none of this weird, like, lower level team truly screwing a top team. Like Duke, Clemson, Louisville have basically taken care of business throughout the year, and Louisville and Duke got clipped on the road by one of the better teams in the ACC. I don't know what that tells you when we get into the NCAA tournament, but given what we know about Clemson, Duke, and potentially Louisville, there's no reason why you can't think that the ACC will get those 3 teams in the Sweet 16 or something like that. I mean, I can see them making
stunned
runs
if they weren't.
I'd be stunned. Yeah.
The only thing for me is health with these teams now.
Yeah.
And going into this, if your conversation is Duke or the field, I'm going to take the field. I know Duke was playing so well, but a lot of people tried to tee up Duke, Louisville, or Clemson versus the field. I'm taking the trio.
Okay.
Right? So I just think these teams are able to win in different ways. I love the pieces to the puzzle. They have an identity about them. But the health factor, I think, is a big issue for really 2 teams. Clemson seems fine. Rain Smith for Louisville is a big X factor.
He is.
Even
Biggest
if
stroke, man.
He can shoot it anywhere in the building. And the other team has no choice but to say, if you're guarding Rain Smith, we get a little practice time in here. If you're guarding Rain Smith, you have no help responsibilities. You're not allowed to look at anybody else. Don't let him shoot. right? And then obviously I didn't even get quite that treatment. I mean, Rain Smith's been unreal. I thought he was going to break Louisville's season record for made threes this year, but the injuries have obviously halted that progress a little bit.
Luke, appreciate it, man.
Absolutely.
Thanks again,
Heck
man.
of a way to end it with
I
this.
know. Just like, do we have to stop? Do we have to stand? I don't know. I don't know what's going on here.
This has actually happened before during our podcast. So.
Yes. So you know what? I'm gonna hit the little music button here real quick, and we'll be right back. I guess we're gonna keep going here while we got the we have the national anthem going. Folks, this is live podcasting. You can't get this anywhere else. You can't get this content anywhere else.
I just love that it's the second time that it's ever happened to us. Like, I've never felt more like Dean Smith in my life. You got to prepare for all situations.
Goodness. All right, let's get to label. All right, that was very well done. That was very good. Very good. Before we get back to Duke,
I love
Carolina.
when you get flustered. Makes me happy.
It happens.
Like the guy
time.
showing up for the gift card the other day. You were just like,
I'm not
in my radio bubble.
You're not going to let that go, are you? You're just not going to let that go. Okay. We'll get back to Duke, Cooper Flagg, what Jon Scheyer had to say. We talk a little bit about Carolina and some NCAA tournament discussion. But it is time. Kind of mad at myself. I don't have a graphic for this yet. I don't have any music.
Yes.
We need a Joey Giggs NC State coach search update.
My guy Jay.
Are you on the flight tracker right now, Joe?
It was sent to me, yes.
Okay.
My guy Jay said, y'all need to do an intro when you talk about the coaching search using the Sopranos theme song. Goes along with the Joey Giggs motif.
So what
Woke up this morning.
So some things have changed. Last time
Throws change into the highway,
the
parkway.
The last time we checked in with the NC State coaching search, we basically said, the boosters want Will Wade, but it might not be so simple. You had brought up Mike White. You had brought up Ryan Odom. We also discussed Mike Bray in there as well. But with all coaching searches and what you're hearing and all that kind of stuff, it changes. It flows. I guess. Oh, that's what
Simon
says.
Says?
That's the Simon Says guy. The Simon Says guy. Where is he? He's right there. He's right there with the. He's got the headset mic on right now.
with his backpack.
So what's funny is there are people who like to, like when they think they're trying to insult me or something like that. You just like to hear your own voice talk. No, ladies and gentlemen, nobody loves to hear their own voice quite like the Simon Says guy at ACC Tournament.
I'm sad now we won't be here for the halftime show. Buddy, I'm trying to break news over here. Come on.
I'll tell you what.
1, 2.
Are we good? 1, 2?
1, 2.
Oh, he loves talking.
I got a call late last night.
Yeah.
From a person who had been in contact with Will Wade and said, do you think that NC State knows, do you think Boo specifically knows that Will has interest in the job? And I said, well, listen, I think the money people and the collective people around NC State have made it known that Will is their preference.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the list I put out yesterday did not include Wade because that's Boo's list.
Yep.
Okay. So I think the top 2 names on that list either politely declined or said, hey, I don't think the timing is right.
Okay.
So that's Mike White and Ryan Odom. Okay. Now that gets you down to Mike Bray still being out there potentially. It also gets you down to what I've been told, though, is Justin Gainey or Will Wade. Justin Gainey, former NC State assistant, is now at Tennessee. And the flight tracker awareness was sent to me about Boo's trip to Tennessee. And then also the trip to Louisiana to meet with Will Wade. So luckily enough, Will Wade, or coincidentally enough, Will Wade and Justin Gainey have the same agent. So that can be a good thing for NC State and Boo Corcoran, believe it or not. Now, the question is Will Wade in a position where he's in a hurry or he's desperate? And I would say to you, he's not. And then now this is where the financial commitment comes back into play.
Okay.
It can't just be, oh, we want Will Wade. Well, Will Wade's going to look at it, or just that Will Wade has interest or that would take the job.
Mm-hmm.
Being willing to leave McNeese to take the NC State job is not really the math you're working on here. The question is, can you secure Will Wade services over a different potential opening? Let's say Texas, who continues to keep winning, which is a good thing, obviously, for NC State. Let's say what happens if, the morality police have told me that Indiana will not hire Chris Beard for his legal issues that he had at Texas.
I was talking to somebody yesterday about that.
And people have been adamant about that to me, and I've dismissed it for the last couple of weeks because I've just been kind of like,
well, actually, hold on a second because it's live. Hey, Rob. We're Rob Doster from Field of 68. Does NC State have a coach yet? I mean, because I know you're also plugged in. We're sitting here talking about these things. Here. This is just live. Let's just do this. Rob
it's
is
the
here.
hottest mic ever.
It's not. Careful with that hot mic. But yeah, Rob Doster's here. This is just classic, like on the fly.
Podcasting.
This
in
is
2025,
live
man.
podcasting
This is how it goes.
right now. That's how we do. All right, Joe was giving his update.
I have the
NC
same
State.
roadcaster, by the way.
Roadcaster's money.
These things
dude.
are awesome.
They're amazing.
They're awesome.
They're amazing. All right, what are you hearing?
Did you see the I don't know if I want to say that yet. Here's my take on what NC State should do. They should go to a local bank.
Yeah.
They should buy a Brinks truck, right?
Yeah.
They should fill it up with as much money as they can. They should drive it down to Lake Charles, Louisiana, and just back it right up onto Will Wade's front lawn. That's what I would do.
They did that on a plane,
That's where
right?
the financial portion of this comes into
Yeah.
play. And I think Will is not desperate. That's what I was just saying, that there's a difference between Will being interested in the job and Will being desperate. And Will's not going to take a job where the financial commitment is not there. And I'm not talking about his salary or his coaching staff. I'm talking about the payroll for the basketball team.
Because that's what matters
next year.
now.
Yeah.
It is. We talk about 5 years ago, what everyone said was, can he recruit? Like, can he recruit a certain area? Can he recruit a cerare way? Can he recruit a type of player that's going to go there? And the only way you recruit now is money. It's how big is the paycheck going to be?
Yeah.
Am I actually going to get the paychecks that I agree to get, right? That you sign. So that's the biggest thing. So they don't have the financial resources, and he has no incentive to jump right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's not desperate. Maybe you can explain this better. You understand the national perspective better. People have tried to explain to me that Indiana is like on their high horse and does not want to hire Chris Beard. Is that essentially correct? A summation anyway?
I feel like if they were going to hire Chris Beard, there'd be a lot more smoke around that right now.
Sure.
And the everything you hear is like, I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to go that way. And I think I don't blame him either. There's stuff there. There's stuff there that I get. Like, but if I'm Indiana, I would have a difficult time hiring Chris Beard, knowing
everything that's all the baggage that comes with it. Right.
Do you think Clemson's legit? Do you think Brad Brownell is a legit candidate at Indiana?
I think that they've gone far enough down the list now where he is.
Okay.
Right. And I don't know if I love Brad Brownell at Indiana, because I feel like my take on it is he has spent the last 10 years recruiting the same kind of player to Clemson.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not like Chase, and that's nothing against Chase Hunter or Ian Shefflin. They're really good basketball players. But now he's got 5th and 6th year guys, and the ACC is a little bit down. And I feel like that's why he's thriving the way that he's been thriving these last couple of seasons. So I don't know. Indiana feels like you need someone that's going to be willing to go out there and do the stuff Pat Kelsey does at Louisville. And I just don't know if that – Brad Brownell's a basketball coach. I think he's just happy being at a school where it's a football school. He could just go out there and coach hoops, right?
Yep.
Again, if I'm Indiana, I don't know why they wouldn't go after Will Wade. Like, I understand that there's some kind of legal stuff going on there, but like, that dude's going to win.
If we could parse the bad person and bad acts, Chris Beard has legitimate bad person acts, whereas Will Wade has fake NCAA.
It's not even illegal anymore.
It's not even illegal.
You're going to recruit him because he's going to make strong ass offers. That's why you want him now.
Right, and that's what it all comes back to. NC State had to make a strong ass offer to Will Wade beyond just what he's going to get paid, but everything that goes along with it. And we can kind of wrap the conversation on Will Wade about this. Anybody who's getting pearl clutchy about Will Wade we talked about shit, man. You mentioned this the other day. Like, if you told Boo Corrigan,
Yeah.
back in 2017,
19.
or 2019,
Yeah, I think that was the only stumbling block, because it's not just Boo Corrigan. You're talking about the chancellor
yeah,
and the AD and that whole school. Like, they spent a significant amount of money on that NCAA case.
yeah.
So if you were involved in that and worked through that, you would have it would give you pause, right? Now,
Not anymore.
The world has changed. I get that, but I'm just saying it would give you pause if you were Randy Woodson and Boo Corrigan. And I respect the fact that a man's got to live by a code. They have their own ideas. But I do think the two people that they thought would be their ideas, Mike White and Ryan Odom, have let them know that they're not going to be the coach at NC State.
Yeah.
And I think Ryan Odom would be a great hire for NC State. And what Mike White is doing at Georgia shouldn't be overlooked, right?
No.
Like, Georgia's good.
Yeah.
Georgia's going to be in the NCAA tournament as a single-digit seed. Georgia is, right? So I don't think he would
With
be
like
a
5 and
bad
15
hire.
record. Yeah.
Yeah.
My take is always going to be this: like, do you want to win in basketball? Do you want to be good?
Yeah.
Because if you want to be good, there's going to be sometimes you got to look over things. There's only like how many guys out there are just perfect human beings that also happen to be great basketball coaches that are going to be good for your Q rating and that aren't going to piss anybody off.
St. John's cares about any of the Rick Pitino stuff right now?
I think St. John's loves it. Loves it.
Right.
They're leaning into
As
it.
they should.
And look at what's happened. Like, I was at the Garden 3 weeks ago for the UConn game, and it was as an electric of an atmosphere as I've seen in an NBA arena with 19,000 people. You know how hard that is to do?
Dude.
In an arena that big?
Hey, look, man. Maybe it was the Fanta vibes. I don't know, because he was doing PA for that. What was it? It was St. John's versus Creighton. I just went on a random because I was done with the ACC tournament when I was in Brooklyn. I'm like, I want to finally go to a Big East event at that building to see what it's like. It's St. John's versus Creighton. Not exactly like a blockbuster matchup. Packed.
Yes.
Old a retired fireman who's been watching St. John's for 40 freaking years. He knows
the thing
all
about the Big East tournament, it's different than all the other conference tournaments because everyone has their tradition when they go there, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have your hotel that you stay at, you have the bar that you go to before every single game, you have the restaurant that you go to either before the game or after the game if it's something in the afternoon. Like, everybody from every fan base has their traditions, and it kind of stalled out a little bit when the Big East broke up.
Yeah.
But now that Xavier is fully part of this and Creighton's fully part of it, like, it's picked up again. It's the Garden. There's just something about the Garden.
No, there's something about it. All right, dude.
Yeah.
Good catching up. This is live, baby. I love it.
Thanks, Rob.
Field of 68.
Appreciate it.
A live podcasting with Rob Doster, Field of 68. Figured we'd bring in a real-time national perspective on that kind of stuff and kind of banter here a little bit with Giglio. All right. So let's put a bow on the NC State coaching search stuff. If we can sum it up, Joe, where are we at?
They're down to two choices, and Will Wade's one of them, and Justin Gainey is the other. And I think the money and the collective are squarely behind Will Wade. I would caution some people on social media who are questioning Justin Gainey's bona fides, though, because Justin was a point guard at NC State, was a hell of a competitor as a player.
Yeah.
Worked with Herb Sendek out west, worked with Sean Miller out west, worked with Shaka Smart at Marquette, and really has taken a kind of top lieutenant consigliere role with Rick Barnes now down at Tennessee. And I just glossed over his App State stop where he found guys at App State.
Yeah.
It's not easy what Justin's been able to do in help finding players. Dalton Connect at Northern Colorado. Okay. Like, Justin's really, really good. And I think he deserves a chance. And I know Levi Watkins was on Kevin Keats' staff. I know Levi would work with Justin here at NC State. I have the utmost confidence, if it's Justin, that Justin and Levi could put together a really good team and do an excellent job in coaching them. So I'm slightly disappointed to see some of the reaction, and I get it.
I know why.
It's a portion of the fan base that is just fever pitch for Will Wade, but you shouldn't dismiss just Justin's bona fides at all.
Okay.
I think he would be Tennessee is ready to turn their program over to Justin. So I think State's in a win-win position. I do think there's going to be some patience involved if Will is the choice, though, because Will is not someone who panics. Will's not someone who's desperate. Now, he knows he doesn't want to be at McNeese next year, but he's also someone who's going to make sure he makes the best choice for him.
Yeah.
And that might well end up being NC State.
It could be.
It could be. But I promise you, it's not going to be like this instantaneous, like snap your fingers and it's done.
Now, one other thing I wanted to say before we move on to Duke, Cooper Flagg, and North Carolina. When it comes to coaching searches, I have never, well, I've never covered a coaching search. You know, in my role in doing what I've done for the longest time has always been to collect as much information that's out there and condense it into something that people can understand.
Sure.
I'm not on the ground doing calls and hitting up agents and things like that like you are. But the important thing that I've always understood about coaching searches is that they change pretty quick.
They do.
They change pretty quick. And I could be poking around the building today and talking to all the folks and seeing what they're saying, or, and hearing what they're saying, and then it completely changed. And that happened with you overnight.
You were driving me home,
and you were
and the phone call,
and the phone. Somebody from NC State, or an NC State guy, called you, and they were like catching up on all of this stuff. And this brings us back to Brad Crawford at 24/7. Remember yesterday when we last left you, Brad Crawford was saying, "There's no way." Not at NC State. He's waiting for the job. At 2:02 today, Brad Crawford tweets out that NC State coaching search has gone from Will Wade as the top priority to Will Wade is waiting for the job to come open to the pack going all in on Wade. The fans clearly want Wade as their next coach, as do the boosters. Searches are fluid. Things can change swiftly. That's why.
That's a good way to put it.
It's a good way to put it.
I'll say this for Boo too. This will not be an 06 or an 11 situation because I know Justin will take the job.
Yeah.
So and Bray would have taken the job too, by the way. So I think he put himself in a situation where he had a couple guys in mind.
Yeah.
I think he went to those guys, got their answer, and is now ready to make his final choice here, which is smart.
So one quick thing too about Mike White. We were talking about that with Rob. We were talking about Ryan Odom as well. Usually the way that works is obviously Mike White and Boo have a relationship.
Yes.
So that's a real easy one to kind of figure out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That is not back channels. This is kind of like, just let you know, right? And
that's also a conversation you have. You got to remember, Mike White was at Florida when Boo got this job.
Yes.
Like, that's a conversation you had. They probably had it in 22, if we're being honest right now.
I can see that.
Too.
Like, what if? It's like what if scenarios. So
yeah.
you go in with an informed perspective. And then Ryan Odom always kind of spoke to my back channel conversation. Like, hey, if this job were open or if this was a thing, would you?
All these guys talk.
They all freaking talk.
All these guys talk now.
They all talk.
They don't have that many. In this case, you're talking about the two guys with the same agent, but these guys talk and they know like potentially what's coming open as well. And that's why I would just caution with Will. It's probably not a today decision. You're probably looking at somebody who is going to weigh his options. Now, if you're NC State, can you overwhelm him with a financial offer? NC State has never done that in its history. I've covered coaching searches going back to Herb Sendex, and NC State every time talks about doing that, but has never done that.
I also have one last question about State. I keep saying I have a last question about State. You know what I've not heard in any of the conversation regarding how NC State's going to go forward with a new coach, general manager, any of that stuff?
Well,
what does that look like? I mean, we just saw Carolina play, and they've been going through it. We've talked about it. Are they going to get a GM? They should have had a GM from the jump. With Duke, it was not even a question. They had a GM from the start. So if we know what the deal is, I'm not hearing anything about a general manager at NC State.
That gets back to your infrastructure and commitment. We'll see. I would assume if Will were to do that, I would assume Will would have a general manager.
Yeah, I would assume so too.
And the budget would be what it is. I hope that Justin can get a similar type of budget, but Tennessee's done a really good job. Now the SEC is different. The SEC, every school in the SEC was at least $3 million. Okay, but what Tennessee has done, Tennessee lost Jonas Adu to Arkansas for $1.2 million. They haven't been at the top of that pyramid, but they've made good choices, and Justin's been a part of that. So, different strokes for different folks, but we'll see what this infrastructure looks like once the hire is made. That's a big part of this, right? And you gotta figure there's no way Will's signing on the dotted line without assurances of what the financial situation will be.
All right, to Duke, Cooper Flagg, and Maliq Brown. The Cooper Flagg injury is going to be the thing that receives the most amount of attention for obvious reasons. I think Maliq Brown's dislocated shoulder, which he re-injured, and they had to take him out on a stretcher in the most precautionary of ways, is a larger problem for Duke. I've said this about Maliq Brown in particular as he was dealing with injury issues. It's not about the regular season. It's not about the ACC tournament. You can win the ACC tournament without Maliq Brown. You can't win the NCAA tournament without Maliq Brown. So I'm going to be really curious to see how they handle that. Same thing with Cooper Flagg. You can win the ACC tournament without Cooper Flagg. You can get to the Sweet 16 without Cooper Flagg, but you ain't winning it without Cooper Flagg. And that's why I thought Jon Scheyer's comments about Cooper Flagg's ankle sprain, he called it an ankle sprain that was swelling up. Interesting. This is from our friends Ethan Hyman over at the News and Observer. Put the audio and the pictures together.
Cooper, he just came down, sprained his ankle. X-rays were negative, which is great. We just have to understand there's going to be swelling and to see how he recovers and how he goes from there. Well, I already know how he's wired. And look, to be honest with you, I would have to be convinced by everybody in the locker room when I go back that he should play. It's not worth it. It just isn't. And again, I mean, he was swollen already. It's not about being ready to go tomorrow. That's not the most important thing for us. We got to see if we can get him right for this run that we can make in the tournament. But I would have to be really convinced that we should even consider seeing if he can go tomorrow. And he may not be able to go anyway. He probably won't be able to go anyway. But I think it's a real long shot,
So that was Jon Scheyer during today's post game talking about Cooper Flagg. That was a follow-up question that he got from a Maine reporter, because Cooper Flagg has a guy they have a guy who sends all over the place to go follow Cooper Flagg. And I agree with Jon Scheyer. This is not like you're not playing with this, and this is an opportunity for players to step up. It's an opportunity for Cooper Flagg and Jon Scheyer specifically to say, hey, look, we're more than just Cooper Flagg. Let's go out and beat Carolina without Cooper Flagg. And you cannot chance it with that ankle. So I don't expect to see Cooper Flagg the rest of the tournament here in Charlotte.
It might turn out to be a good thing for Duke. Obviously not him being seriously injured. He turned his ankle. He came down, he turned it.
Yeah.
They're doing all the things they need to do right now to take care of him and get him ready. But ultimately, we've talked about this. The ACC champion usually does not win the NCAA championship. Duke did it in 2010, but it's really not something that happens regularly. And we've had a lot of champions come out of this league regularly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me. In fact, it might end up helping Carolina. So that would be I want to see the league get more than 3 teams in.
Yeah.
I mean, you're an 18-team league, and that just blows my mind a little bit.
I saw Lenardi had Carolina as the last team in now. So
as they should. I mean, these other teams that lost, I try to tell you people, one of the oldest axioms is you cannot go 0-1 in your conference tournament if you're on the bubble. You cannot. And now Carolina at worst is 2-1 here in Charlotte. I do think they're safely in the field. Just barring Memphis and UC San Diego and whoever else, not the one bid thief leagues, barring something like that, I think Carolina's in, regardless of what they do tomorrow night. Now for Duke, you look at the way that they played, they finally looked mortal. They did. Even when Cooper turns the ankle with 2:46 left in the first half. And you and I talked about this after the Duke-Carolina game the first time. Mm-hmm. Would have been easy for them to be in snooze mode up at Syracuse.
Yes.
Instead, they pulled out their Triton and put it in Syracuse's ear up at the Dome. And this afternoon was the first time I watched them and thought, they look kind of mortal.
Yeah.
Mortal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they've been on this blistering fever run. Yeah. Basically since the Kansas game. They lost down at Clemson, but Clemson played out of
I was going to say, I would say more to the point, it was after the Clemson loss, they've been on this.
Even then,
they've been on this tear.
They've continued to find different levels.
Yes.
Today was the first time that they looked like they didn't have that, let me destroy you kind of look in their face, even when Cooper was out there. I do like the way that they responded without Cooper, but let's be perfectly honest, Georgia Tech's not a very good basketball team.
They're not.
So there is that. I think tomorrow has the potential to be a really fun day because I'm up on the concourse after the Duke game. You got Duke weaving out, and you had Wake and Carolina fans weaving in. And the concourse, I could almost smell the cigarette smoke from Reynolds. I could almost. But it was fun. You know, it was fun being up there and seeing. You know, I'm not a xenophobe when it comes to the ACC. I'm now in love with Stanford, who has a Nerd Nation shirt. I mean, Stanford, please don't make me like you. Please, Stanford, don't do that to me. And then obviously Louisville in the last 10 years as a newcomer, they have not won this tournament.
No.
You know, if I'm Pat Kelsey, I have a theory that, and going into this, my theory was I thought either Louisville or Clemson would win here, and whichever one does won't get to the Final Four.
Yeah.
So it could turn out one of them wins and the other two end up in the Final Four in the tournament itself. So I think tomorrow sets up really nice with Duke and Carolina, and then potentially Louisville against Clemson.
I don't know. I just I get that sometimes I can be completely off base on a read of things, but I saw it today with Isaiah Evans, where the game was a slog. They missed 13 3-pointers in a row to start the game.
Yeah.
And then Isaiah Evans comes in, hits that 14th attempt, and things started to cook from there. They also started going inside again, which is something that I was kind of like mumbling under my breath earlier in that game. I'm like, stop shooting threes and go inside, for heaven's sake. But then they settled down because Duke's just the better team. They're just rolling guys off the bench, and it's another 5-star player, as Luke Hancock pointed out to us earlier. So I just have this kind of like inclination that Isaiah Evans is going to have just a monster game, just killing them from three or something like that. Con Knippel, we forget that he's also an NBA talent.
Oh,
all right.
I don't know why you would forget it.
Some people do because everything's focused on Cooper Flagg. So I understand that. But that Con Knippel can also have a monster game against Carolina. The question that's going to be curious for Carolina is that it gets back to what Hubert Davis has been saying as they've been turning these things around. They understand the detail. They understand the assignment. They understand the effort that it requires to play defense. We saw that in Chapel Hill. We saw Georgia Tech do it today.
Yeah.
How is Duke going to respond to that now that they have had a couple of times here where teams have said, okay, we think we know how to disrupt you. We think we know how to beat you. How do they respond to that? It's easy to do against Carolina because all they got to do is go back and look at the Carolina game and say, this is what they tried. Georgia Tech tried the same thing. They overcame it. Carolina's better than Georgia Tech. So I'll be curious to see how they respond to the physicality of these games in which they've looked mortal, as you said. But
yeah, I mean, they're certainly capable of beating North Carolina without Cooper Flagg tomorrow.
Yeah.
I suspect, though, that Carolina can get them. And I think it's because of what we talked about with Luke. They had to be demoralized leaving Chapel Hill, Carolina, thinking we just gave them our best shot and it wasn't that close in the end.
Right.
And now without Flagg in this game, you now have to recalibrate. Okay. And I thought RJ Davis turned it on enough when he had to. But I think his situation, he needs to do even more tomorrow.
All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this OG Live at the ACC Tournament as the quarterfinals continue. Our ACC coverage is brought to you by our friends at Hometown Realty. Check them out, myhtr.com. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the wonderful graphics put together by Anna over at Sound Off. Hometown Realty is going to take care of you, especially when it comes to selling your house, because the market is nuts. Do not accept any of these cash offers, these guaranteed cash offers. You're leaving money on the table.
Yeah, don't be stupid.
Somebody's going to overpay for your house, okay? So just get on it and have Hometown Realty help you out. Are you ready for the billboard? Brought to you by...
Oh, yeah.
We got to close things out.
Do it.
With all of our corporate champions.
Well, before you do, because I know you got to catch your breath there.
Yeah.
I've been to a lot of shoot-arounds. I've been to a lot of open practices.
Yeah.
This is the most energy I've ever seen from a team in a shoot-around in my life from Louisville. And it's their managers, it's the players, they're all, and you might go, well, that's great. That happy horse shit ain't going to help you win basketball games. But I got news for you. You feel good and you got people pumping you up.
Yeah.
And your confidence. Like there's a connectivity here for Louisville. I don't want to jinx them because I still think Patino shows up in their bracket and gets them. But color me impressed by the Cards.
All right.
We got the Cardinals versus the Cardinal tonight, just in case you wanted to be even more confused than usual. Stanford, also a Nike school, by the way, with their Nothing Easy shirt.
I know.
Listen, Stanford, the definition of your graduates would suggest that there is something easy in life. Okay? Spare me, Stanford. Spare me.
You have such a vendetta against Stanford. I don't understand
Stanford.
why.
Oh,
Did you date somebody who went to Stanford out of high school?
Stanford, Duke, Virginia, Carolina. What could the common thread be, Joe?
Wow.
You have a problem with elitist assholes, Giglio. Wow, yeah. Well, yes, I do.
Wow. Okay.
Actually, I do.
You do, because those don't
Believe it or not,
those don't exist at NC State. I forgot,
I mean,
dude.
season to taste, right?
I guess so.
Some are worse than others.
Money's money at the end of the
Some are-
day.
some are
It's going to
worse
stratify you. All right, so I air checked myself yesterday. I wasn't really happy with how I did the
Oh,
closing
okay.
billboard.
Well, you feel good about it. Let's
I
go.
don't know, man. I was kind of
I want you to feel good about it.
weak. It was kind of weak. So I'm going to do this a little bit different. I feel like I got to get a little bit more announcer voice, like the Simon Says guy. You know, check 1 2, check 1 2. So all right, let's see
River.
let's see if I could do this a little bit better. Ovies and Giglio at the 2025 ACC Tournament in Charlotte is brought to you by Keller Williams Commercial, TriangleNCCommercial.com, Miller Lending, MillerLending.com/the OG, O2 Fitness, more than a gym, 1-800 Plumber and Air. The name is in the number. The number is in the name. The Butcher's Market. Have 80 hot dogs today. Breeze through. Your home for Zinn, Celsius, gas, and lottery tickets. Yes, somebody won money from a breeze through out in Pittsburgh. We're not there yet, Joe. Mosquito Authority. BugsBite.com. Home Field, home of the Hoop Society. Go to homefieldapparel.com today and use the promo code OG24 to save 15% off your order. They dropped I'm breaking character here. They dropped the shooting shirts today, like old school shooting shirts, warm-up shirts. Phenomenal. Absolutely go check them out. Long Leaf Swine. Don't sleep on the burger. State Farm. Matt Davis. InsureGarner.com. Happy Inhale. No hockey breaks today, but you can take a smoothie break at Happy Inhale. 2 Roosters. Will we blame them for the coaching search going the wrong way? Whitaker and Hamer, attorneys and counselors at law. Check them out at wh.lawyer. And of course, Roback, OG20. Do you want to show people the AB cart, since that's like the theme today? Anyway,
Greatest shirt ever made.
it's fantastic.
Go get yours. Roback.com. OG20 is our code. Save 20% on your initial order. Just a little tip.
Yeah.
If you've already used OG20 for either the state or Carolina swag, if you use a different email, you can get the code too.
What?
It's kind of what I added.
Anyway,
It's a win.
if you enjoyed today's live pod, by all means, give us a like, throw a comment, rate us, subscribe to the podcast platform, whatever you use. 5 stars only, positive vibes only. That helps with the algorithm. We will see you Friday night for the ACC semifinals. We'll get Duke and Carolina round 3, and we'll fire up the YouTube after.